Let's try this again. Sorry, we just had a hiccup. If those y'all don't know, this is the Big Down. My name is Bobby Hill, not that Bobby Hill, the other Bobby Hill, the brother Bobby Hill. Yes, that's me. All right, thank y'all for tuning in this evening. Sorry I'm a little late. I wanted to get started earlier, but I had a, you know, I had a little young. I have a Now look, all my kids are old. My youngest graduated, a year ago. So I don't have any kids, like young kids. So I have, where I live at, there are a couple of young kids in the area. So this young man wanted to come in, see that we have a boxing, punching bag, So I'm trying to keep, always trying to keep it in, you know. So we got a few dumbbells, few weights and stuff. Also, I go to the gym, so I have something at home. So if I can't get to the gym, I can still maintain a little bit. And ain't trying to be, Ronnie Coleman out here, but trying to maintain, trying to ain't out here trying to be muscle bound, but I'm just trying to, like look in the mirror. And like I said the last show, look in the mirror and like what looks back at me. So that's my motivation. Excuse me. And I got my beautiful wife, my workout partner. She's the reason why I'm here right now. She's the reason why I'm here, she might be watching. She is. I like to say to Miss Sandra Zavala Hill that I love you with all my heart. You the reason why I'm here, and we riding out together. We doing this together. I was trying to think of a good analogy for real life. We could have went, say Dom and Letty and Bobby Whitney, all this. I do different. We are Ding Rames and Jody's mama. If you don't know, you know that's what we are. Ding Rames and Jody's mama. Oh my God! But yes, she's my rock. She's been very 100% supportive. She gives me inspiration to do this, and you gotta think about the future. Think about things that we can do from this and try to help as many people out as we can. Because she's just like me, like to give, like to help people, like to pay it forward. You know, even we don't got it much, but we want to give help where we can. There's always people that's less fortunate not here. There's hard times out here. Gas $4. That's a whole nother show. $4 gas today. Blew my mind. There wasn't even no damn hurricane. What in the world going on, man? $4. But, like I said, but she's just like me, man. Like to give, like to, open her heart. Sometimes sometimes it can backfire, but you don't let that stop you from, still giving. Let the person that betray you, let them deal with it with whoever they believe in. Let them deal with that. You keep the goodness in your heart and don't let it distract you from, being who you want to be. Don't let that harden you up. Just because one person did you wrong, somebody did you wrong. I don't mean everybody like that. Everybody won't do you wrong, but just keep your guard up. Keep your guard up, and make that next person have to work a little bit harder. Make sure your vetting process is a little bit more tighter. Make sure you won't get done, get done dirty the same way. You know, when they say fool me once, I ain't gonna George W. Bush it. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. What did J. Cole say? Fool me 3 times. Forget the peace sign. Grab the chopper, make it rain on you. Ain't gonna do all that, but yeah. But like I said, I had a little child. I had a little man. I don't even know his name, man. He comes in, plays with us because we have. I think he has a stepbrother and a little sister, and he had other siblings too. But it's just him and stepbrother and his little sister. They play a lot. They out here playing. I let them come over, punch the bag a little bit, let them get the weights a little bit, keep them doing something, keep them busy, keep them positive, man, keep them, out of, keep their mind busy so they won't be thinking about doing something mischievous and getting in trouble and stuff like that. Because, the kids, when they don't have anything to do to fill their mind with, what the kids can do, in this part. And that's one thing I want to talk about today. Just, us as parents, us, people around my age, a little bit younger and stuff like that, man. We need to do better with these kids, man. We need to do better with preparing this next generation for this world that's about to, them have to grow up in. Because, it's crazy out here. We got to prepare these kids. I know it's crazy. We're trying to figure it out ourselves, but we got to prepare these kids, man. We got to stop. We got to start making these kids accountable and start guiding them, especially our black kids, man. We got to start, don't you see out here in this world, you see how it is out here in this United States, man, where there's a certain faction of people out here who's trying to erase our history or trying to soften it up or whiten it up or trying to, just forget it altogether, and it's up to us to make sure that we keep our legacy. Don't let our kids and our grandkids go through the same thing we went through. Example I'm saying is that, it took me 40 years of my life till I found out about the Tulsa Massacre. You know, I found out about Rosewood, Florida from a movie. You know, I think like it was so bad that I think the movie came out. I remember a movie that came out when we was younger. Mississippi Burning had come out, and that was so it was such a shock to the system of the young black kids because there was a lot of black people in that movie. And after we saw that movie, man, it was a rage amongst everybody that if a white person would say anything to anybody in that group, man, it would have went ugly. But that was because that's you know, it's sort of a little history lesson here. It was a design plan for us not to know like about stuff like that. It was a design plan. And it was orchestrated perfectly. And it did, and it worked, and it sort of worked. It ain't always it didn't work all the way, but it worked. It did its damage, but it goes back all the way back. It goes back to the Civil War. They when the Civil War was over and slavery was abolished. Just because the slavery was abolished, don't mean the people in the South conformed to that or they obeyed that, or all of a sudden their brain just when they was you know their hatred towards us and their thinking that we're less than human. All that didn't go away just because the president signed a bill. They still had them thoughts. They still had that. So they still feel like their cause was righteous. Just because they lost the war don't mean that their mind changed. That means they just lost the war. But with that being said, they they needed a way to not, have the soldiers of the Confederacy looked as like treasonous or traitors, which they were, because they put up arms against the United States. So by the Constitution, they were traitors. They were treasonous. You know, but when Lincoln, ended the war, he sort of like allowed them to come back into the Union. So with that, he had a little compromise. He had a little compromise. He allowed them to, you know, he allowed them to basically they only needed normally they needed like I forgot how many 85%, 60, I forgot the number 65 or 85% of the public to like show loyalty to the United States, so they'll be allowed back into the Union. So I think Lincoln dropped it down to like 15% or something. So a small amount of people had to say, basically a small amount of people had to say, "My bad, you were tripping," and then they allowed them back into the Union. So with that being said, They wanted to, treat these soldiers from the Confederacy as heroes, like they fought for a worthy cause for them, not us. We, whatever. But they thought they was fighting for a worthy cause. So what they did was all the mothers, all the aunts, all the grandmas, all the sisters, all the nieces, cousins, everybody, all the women that were down here in the South that either lost family member or had an injured family member or just was faithful to the cause. They formed a group, a grassroots organization, one of the most successful grassroots organizations in the history of the United States. Was called, I think it was called the United Daughters of the Confederacy. And the reason why they were so powerful was because these women were able to, it's going to sound crazy, but they were able to infiltrate all aspects of the government as far as, the legislative branches, but more importantly, like the local, like the city councils, or in, in this case, the school boards. That was the most important, the school boards, because when they were in the school board, they were able to influence the books that were taught to the kids. And they had to get approval from them, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, before them books were distributed through the schools in the South. So, as you imagine, these people that really didn't care too much about people of our pigmentation would try to admit the parts where they savaged us, but they would in turn call us savages. But when they were the one who committed the savage acts, they wouldn't dare tell their kid that their grandparent cut off the genitals of a African American person and went downtown and sold it to somebody else for it. They would never dare tell their kids that. They want to sanitize it. They want to make it seem like that we are the ones that were the violent ones, or the ones like we wasn't. We were the one that received violence. We were the one that had stuff done to us. But that being said, they wanted to cut all that out. So what they did, they, like I said, they set school books that didn't have the proper content, that didn't glorify the Confederacy or the South. So what I'm saying, they had some more sanitized, like George Washington cutting down the damn cherry tree, and having wooden teeth and all this stuff, and nothing back. They didn't talk about George Washington and say like the reason why he got money and stuff, because he married a girl with money. He didn't have money. He married somebody with money and then obtained that. I can't not hustle, but you're gonna tell the truth, tell it all. Not the sanitized version of it. And when you say that, like stuff like George, like Abraham Lincoln, he freed the slaves and stuff, and that's true. One of the consequences of of his actions was the slaves were freed. But he also said if he could free all the slaves and save the union, he would. But he also said if he could keep all the slaves and free and save the union, he would too. So it didn't matter either way. So you know, don't act like it was 100% noble, man. Just tell these people, tell the truth, man. Time our kids know the truth about what's going on, man. The stuff that happened to us and how we're still here and how we're able to persevere, through everything. We still here. We still here, and we're still, still striving to do better. You know, we face adversity every day in our life is adversity, but we still here. We are still trying to make it happen. I'm sorry, just talk to my sister a little bit. She wanted to see what was going on, but my internet was down for a little bit, and I put it back. I got it back up now, so we all good now. But yeah, they wanted to sanitize it, and that's what they did. They got they sanitized the books and stuff, so the kids weren't able to see. They were only able to look at things in a certain one-sided point of view. They didn't show all the, or they didn't tell all the evil stuff, the bad stuff that they done. They just wanted to glorify everything, and then they want to portray, us as, you know, the people who were lower than them. They were not as good as them. You know, they had to give them a chance because they're not as good as them. They're not as smart as them and stuff like that. That's the type of stuff that, we're taught. Taught to the people. That we were. They said we were three-fifths of a human and stuff like that. So that's the type of stuff we had to go through. But like I said, we persevere. We still here, because you can't stop the truth from coming through. We get out, slowly but surely. You get older, and that's the one advantage of the internet and all this technology. We're able to get, get our information, and be able to, see the stuff that we were able to persevere. And that made me develop a little bit more respect for some of the people that, that came up that we weren't taught that much about. I'm like Chris Rock. Chris Rock I love Chris Rock. I love Chris Rock. He's one of my favorite comedians because he's smart and intelligent. But he was telling the truth when he said, the only thing we were taught in school, Martin Luther King. What's the capital Zaire? Martin Luther King. He said, who's the woman that sat in the back of the bus? Who's the woman who refused to give up her seat to a white man in the bus? He was like, are you sure it was a woman? I got it. Martin Luther King. But yeah, that's all we was taught. We weren't taught about, we weren't taught about Malcolm X, or we didn't find out really about Malcolm X until the movie came out. And even then, people were looking at it like, Malcolm X, like he was some revolutionary figure. And no, he wasn't. All he wanted was, our people to advance, our people to have ours. Just like everybody else have theirs. We just want to have ours. And I'm like, what Reverend Aaron Sharpton. I listen to all these people, man. I don't say this because I listen to them. I follow everybody step for step. I agree with things they say, and I don't agree with everything that everybody say, but I agree with things some people say. But Al Sharpton, the people will be glad that we just want to be left alone. We want equality. We don't want vengeance. Better be glad for that. Because we're not that type of people. We're not, regardless of what people try to, portray us as in the media or in society. Period. We're not a violent people. We're violent when we're provoked. Like anybody. If you ever get provoked, yes, you will get violent. I mean, of course, there's knuckleheads in every color. There's knuckleheads and ignorance in everywhere. So, we can't, just like, you got our youth, our young people and some old people that don't, seem to act right. We got them. Every race got them. Every ethnicity got them. Every one of them got them. And that's not making an excuse for it because we got to do better with them too. We got to do better. We got to stop. We got to stop exterminating each other out here in these streets, and we got to stop. We got to, like I said, I'm a big, I watch a lot of movies, and there will be times here that I will quote a lot of people from movies or quote things that I might have seen or whatever. And one thing I like to quote is I like to quote from movies. So if you don't know the movie, whatever, I quote from Ferris Styles from Boys in the Hood back in the day, back in the early 90s. The best way you can defeat a race is eliminate their ability to reproduce. We out here sitting up here killing each other, young men killing each other, man. We carry the seed to spread to make our generation grow. Us black men. And we out here killing each other, man. We just killing off a generation. We out here acting silly, man, over crazy stuff, man, over material stuff or something stupid that don't even matter. In the big picture, man, it don't even matter. We sit up here getting, doing people work for us, man. We should be on a different level, man. We shouldn't be out here doing this, man. We should be out here as a family, as a unity, as a community. We have power in this country if we can just come together and see it. It's a problem that, the system has been designed to separate us so much that we can't see our power because we're too busy hating this other person right here that looks just like us. Instead of inviting them in and say, "Come on, brother, we are eyeing him because why are you looking at me?" Or this person got something you don't have, and you might be jealous of them or something because society told us that you need to have this to be accepted. You know, we don't. Instead of looking at us, instead of accepting this man on merit, man, we letting somebody else or another, letting the media or society decide for you who this person is instead of you just coming up with this person and talking to this person. You know, and if you disagree with each other, agree to disagree. That's one thing we got to learn how to do: agree to disagree. We don't all get along. We don't all agree. We don't all go by the same. Go walk on the same path, walk on the same beat. You know, that's why God gave us. God gave us a brain. Everybody don't got the same brain. Everybody don't think the same. Everybody don't act the same. So you got to be flexible, be able to accept somebody that don't think like you or somebody that don't act like you. Somebody don't look like you. You got to be able to accept that person for who they are, how they treat you. You know, who cares how they grew up? Who cares all that stuff? It's about how that person treats you in that moment. That person treats you respect in that moment. You need to respect that person back. You know, and that's what we need to, and that's what we need to teach these kids, man, about respect, man. That's one thing that has been lost, like respect, and that's what I think I wish that we could get back with these kids, man, because it's just so sad, you know. These young kids, all these. I know people listening to this, most of them be parents. Parents to a teenager or older, don't even pisses you off when you call your child's name. First of all, it's going to take you about, after you call them about 5 damn times and they finally answer. And then, you tell them to do something, and the first thing out of their mouth is, bruh. Bruh, I hate that word. I hate that word. I mean, my daughter stopped calling me that, but she was like that too. I'm like, I'm not your bruh, I'm your daddy. I'm not your bruh. Bruh. I'm not your bruh. No. No, but I'm saying just society. We're not. I don't know. These kids, they're not. It's like the same people who sit up here and preach pro-life. I don't want to get about. I don't want to get all political, but whatever. That's where we at tonight. This is where the wind took me tonight in the political oceans. But yeah, the same people who sit up here and say they pro-life and whatever, get rid of abortions. As soon as the kid is born, they don't give a damn about them. So what kind of pro-life are they? What kind of life are they being pro for? Are you pro good life or pro just period living? You don't care how they live. I don't care if they don't, as long as they don't beg me for money, as long as they don't beg the government for money, I don't care. You know, they don't care about the kid after the kid is born. They don't care about the kids in school. They don't care about none of that. But they care about it. The only time they care about it is during election time. They care about abortion and all this stuff. You know, the same people that are pro-life don't give a damn about the kids up here when they're born, and ready to arrest mothers and arrest doctors, and refuse care for young ladies. All this, man, all because an old white man checked yes on a bill that didn't make no sense. I'm just saying, sometimes I feel like our priorities are just messed up sometimes. I'm sure we used to be back in the day, then the divide between Republicans and Democrats wasn't like it used to be, and you can respect some of the things, even if you roll with Democrats, you can respect some of the things that Republicans say, and then vice versa. And if you roll with Republicans, you can respect the things Democrats say and stuff like that. Even when I'm one of the biggest Ronald Reagan fans. I think Ronald Reagan was racist, but he did say we were shining, the shining city on the hill. We not the shining city on the hill now. No. We look like a little raggedy town in the trenches, in the gutter. I mean, it just, the things that we could do and we choose not to because of the hate, because of the hate that spew from, everywhere. Like, especially in the government, man. You see these grown people that can't get along with each other, man. After calling names and we sit here, we got a president that don't have no kind of dignity or class and stuff. But it's hard to teach your kids that. I know it's hard to teach your kids that when they look on TV and this much sitting up there. Oh, man, I don't know what I'm talking about. But a child looking at that will not be inspired to do positive or do whatever or be a you know positive individual looking at that. You know, you want your leaders to inspire. You want your leaders to inspire, and that's why I don't care. I got his book back there. I got some books up there too. I don't care. Was he perfect? No, but to me, he was my symbol. I miss the days of Barack Obama. I miss the days of him because that's when you can look at a leader and be proud of him, man. It don't matter if you agree with what he done or whatever. You can look at him and him on the world stage and be proud that that man represented us as a country. You cannot. People got that feeling now. Not no sensible people. You know. I always said this that we thought it was going to be a turning point, like America had changed and stuff like that. But I felt like the time with Barack Obama, it was like it was an oasis of hope in a desert of despair. Now that oasis is gone. We crawled to it, we chilled for a little while, but now that oasis is gone. We out here in the desert of despair. Out here with high oil prices, high gas prices, high damn grocery prices, and everything. We got these people sitting up here making millions of dollars every day. Trying to justify why they should have them billions of dollars and why you should stay broke. You know, we got to tell these kids that we can't have this, man. We can't be having this, man. We got to find a way to get the proper people to represent the people properly. Get the proper people in to represent the people properly. That's what we need. You know, we need to get younger people in here. We need to get younger people that think differently, not crazy, but think differently. We don't need everybody. We don't need everybody thinking alike. We need different minds in here because we got a lot of problems in here. We need you know, young minds in here that's gonna, help us move forward. Help educate the youth. Help, make this world better, man. Because the direction we going out, man, it's crazy, and these people don't care. People don't care if they burn the world out. They don't care. As long as their bank account is okay. That's all they care about. Like I said, I'm here to keep it real. Here to, you know, this, I'm here to talk about it. We talk about it, discuss it, call it out. We can do, like I said, you can do what you do, afterwards or whatever you choose to do. If you choose to, what information, if you learn something, if I say something you already knew, then but by, it can educate you, and inspire you to do something, I hope I can do that. Hope I can be that person to you too. You know, I'm saying I'm not here trying to be a know-it-all. I'm not a know-it-all. I'm just a person who has experiences. Just I felt like it was time. Like I said, I have no problem talking about. I have no problem like discussing any subject. I have no problem. I'm not. Like I said, I'm not no afraid to talk about anything. Whatever. You know, we can discuss it. If I have knowledge on it, and I thought I don't have knowledge on, I'll let you know. I'm not gonna sit up here and try to pretend like I'm, Confucius and know everything out here. I'm not like that. I'm not, but if I can learn something from somebody give me something to study on, I can go look at it and we come back. If I don't know it, I'll come back. I will know it afterwards. Believe that. I'm here to get educated, just like I'm here to educate y'all, man. And I'm here to vibe with y'all. Let people know, people ain't seen me in a while. That I'm still here. You know, people already know me. Like I said, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Bob. B to the OB. Used to be a young cat. Now I'm an OG. That's it. Nothing else. I'm not a rapper. No. Well, for real, man. I'm just like I said. I'm just here to, just like I'm just want to be here to help. Just want to be here to, you know, you know, listen. Listen to people, and give people my perspective. I'm not saying it's the right perspective. It might not be the right perspective. I'm not simply saying what I say might be right. For your situation. Excuse me, for your situation, it might not be, but if I can shed light a little bit, that's I hope I can help people out. Help people out. I like talking about first couple episodes. I was kept it local a little bit. Talk about things that I wanted to get off my chest about certain things that we had to experience out here growing up in this little town of Clinton, North Carolina, in southeast North Carolina. You know, and like I said, the things going back to talking about earlier about no education and stuff like that. I didn't learn about the riots. I knew about them, but I didn't know the details about the riots in Wilmington, North Carolina, in the late 1800s. And they didn't talk about stuff like that. They didn't want to talk about how that you know how that was basically a massacre, man. How hundreds of white people just slaughtered black people in Wilmington, the streets of Wilmington, North Carolina. They kept stuff like that from us. I don't know why. Only thing they wanted us to know really that we were slaves and we came from Africa. They didn't want us to know the things that they done to us other than, you know, things about slavery. They didn't want to talk about, we didn't learn about Reconstruction. We glossed over it. We didn't talk about, Reconstruction when, and we talked about, we skipped over, we vaguely talked about Jim Crow and all that stuff. They didn't really, delve into all of that because they didn't want us to be sitting up there mad. First of all, because when we school, we was in like 60, 70% white. Excuse me, and they didn't want the black kids, having a, get mad at having a riot because they found out that their parents or grandparents, maybe did something bad to our grandparents, or whatever, our relatives or whatever. So that's something that may cause disruption in school. So, you know, but the truth eventually always come out. They always come out. And like I said, it's up to us as the OGs, the veterans, and stuff like that to keep the kids informed and let them know that you know don't listen to what other people say, man. You know, you're powerful. You know, you're powerful. You come from a great people. You're not a slave. You're not, less than human. You're not three-fifths of a human or none of that stuff, man. You are powerful, you know. Your dark skin is powerful. That's why people try to eliminate it because it's just so powerful. But you can't eliminate it, man. We ain't going nowhere. We ain't going nowhere. We still here. Quoting another movie, quoting Morpheus from down the Matrix Reloaded. We are still here throughout everything. And we ain't going nowhere. You know? We ain't going nowhere. We the most admired people on this planet, the most copied people on this planet. We also the most hated people on this planet. Go figure. People hate us. People hate it, how we look and everything, but not everybody trying to look like us. They want the looks, they want all the positive stuff. They don't want to take they don't want to take, all the negatives that come with it. They don't want that. You know, just take your lips and your physical features and your skin color and all that stuff. And we keep all the racism, we keep all the discrimination and the red lining and everything. You keep all that. We just want your color. We just want your lips. And all the other physical stuff. That's all they want. So sad, but so true. Just having to keep it real tonight. Like I said, it's just on my mind. Just wherever the wind take me, and that's where the wind took me today. I just had the feeling, man. We need to talk about the youth, man, because you know what's on my mind is one of my brothers, man. He just, his son just faced, a horrific event, and it's senseless that we shouldn't be still going through that. We need to grow up. We need to stop letting little disputes and little stuff turn into life changing tragic situations, man. You know, get a cool mind, man. Stop letting whatever, man. Stop letting this stuff like get you out of your element, or get you out of who you are as a person, man. Because in life, all it takes is one a couple moments in your life, and it can change. So a lot of people sitting in prison, not because they were bad person, not because they are inherently bad people. No, there are a lot of people in prison because of the split moment when it was time to make a decision, they made the wrong decision. Got nothing to do with it. They could have been A students. They could have, had a wife and kids and everything like that. But in a moment, of weakness, they made the wrong judgment. And sometimes that's what we need to educate the kids. So when they do, man, we're not going to be able to stop. We're not going to be able to prevent the moments for these kids when they have to make these judgments. All we can do is educate these kids so when the moment comes, they can make the right judgment. That's all we can do for these kids, man. Because first of all, we're fighting against the phones and the internet and everything out here, and it's a losing fight. Like I said, all we can do is educate our kids, connect with our kids, connect with them. You know, you don't have to be there. You don't be their friend, be their parent. But you don't have to rate. You don't have to bring the hammer down all the time. Being a parent is not about putting the hammer down and whooping their ass and stuff like that. It's not about that. It's about educating your kids and making sure they're gonna mess up. When they mess up, make sure they learn the lesson so they won't do it again. Thing that piss you off when they get in trouble for doing the same stuff over and over again. That is the headache. You know, Try to get these kids to learn, educate these kids. Let them know there's more to life than playing sports and stuff like that, man. Try to tell them to learn something, learn life skills, learn how to do something. A black man, learn how to do something else. Learn how to do something other than play sports too. Because sports is only a small part of your life. You know, Learn how to do something, learn how to fix something, learn how to cook something. You know, learn how to figure something out. You know, be useful out here in this world. Because if not, this world gonna throw you away. You got to learn how to be useful out here. Be useful to the world. Be useful to yourself. You know, Stop sitting around being jealous because somebody else got something that you can't. Instead of being jealous, let that inspire you to do to try harder. Stop sitting up here having that damn attitude. If you can't get it, if somebody got something you don't got, you just gonna take it from 'em. That's a good way to be. That's a good way to get up out of here. That's a good way to get up out of here. You don't need to do that, man. You're strong, man. You're strong. You're smart. You're intelligent. You're just applying your intelligence to the wrong thing. You know. Get out of these streets, man. These streets. Get out of these streets, man. The streets. This we don't. We got to stop. Glorify these streets is not it. All of us, we have learned at our age. Everybody around our age, older. We learned what the old folks told us when we was younger. When they were telling us the same thing, man. The streets ain't worth a damn. The streets are temporary. You know. And that's true. That's real. All the stuff that they told us when we was younger is coming to pass, and all we trying to do is pass what we learned to y'all. But y'all got to listen to. You know what? Ain't nothing y'all doing. Ain't nothing these little kids out here doing is anything new. They think what they doing is authentic. Like it's the first time stuff that happened. You know, all y'all is just recycled from the past. But while I'm here, like I said, while I'm here, but, to give me this platform, if I, blessed to get a bigger platform to do this, and that's all I'm gonna do is try to help the kids. I help to show them, tell them like, look, you can do better. You can do better. You can try harder. Worry about your appearance, man. Just to me personally, always felt like your appearance matters. It ain't all about what people think, but sometimes people only have one impression of you. You know, doing that, unless you 7 foot and can shoot a long range 3 pointer, man, you don't need to be walking around with your damn hair looking like Kevin Durant. I'm sorry, you don't supposed to, man. Cut your damn hair, get the edge up, do something, put a brush on it, put some water on it, put some damn grease on it or something. Some damn luau, something. Shit. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm just saying. We sitting up here looking like we came right off the damn boat, man. You expect these people to sit up here and respect you. You sitting up here and don't respect yourself. You know, care about how you look out here, man. You gotta care about how you look, man. That matters, man. You sitting up here worrying about, how police look at you and stuff like that, man. You sitting up here looking like you just got out of jail. How do you think they gonna treat you? Pull your pants up, cut your damn hair, brush it or something. Cut them damn dreads off, cause they stink. FYI, them damn dreads stink. Cut them off. Jesus Christ, man, stop. We got to start setting examples, man. Stop, do. Went to the days where the mom used to do the girls' hair. Girls learn how to do their hair from their mom and stuff like this. Not just everything throwing up in braids. Throw some more weed with some braids on it and just not wash it for a couple weeks. Being lazy and stuff. Nah, man, teach the young ladies how to damn do their hair. Teach them, skills that'll help them out. They have a side business. But teach them how to do this stuff. Stop being lazy with it. Got to. It's our job to sit up here and teach these kids. Stop expecting these kids to sit up here and do it themselves because they're not. They need direction. That's our job. We gotta start directing these kids, man. We gotta stop sitting up here and making everything about us. It's we have to take time out for these kids if you want, if you want things to change. Because you can't sit up here and get mad and complain about kids if you're not doing anything to help them out. Can't be sitting on the damn porch not doing anything. Oh, that damn Johnny always doing something, but you're not doing nothing. You're not doing nothing. You're not pulling little Johnny over to give him some advice and let him know what his actions are doing to his neighborhood. You don't let him know that. But if you do let him know that, you do it in a demeaning way where Johnny ain't gonna listen to you. Talk to him with respect. And he talked to her. Let Johnny got to talk to the other person with respect. It goes vice versa. And this is the vibe. I'm not as far as rappers, I'm not a big. I love him, but he's not my like everybody. In certain people, he's their number one, top five, whatever. But I think he's great. He's my top 10. KRS One. He's very smart. Very intelligent. MC. And he said something one day that it was very true. And I love the fact that he said that. He was like, if younger people don't listen to older people, then they become weaker amongst younger people. And the same thing, if older people don't listen to younger people, then the older people become weaker amongst older people. It's true. Because as a young person, if you don't get that knowledge, you just all you talk to is people your age and stuff, and get life lessons and perspectives from people who are just like you or your same age. Yes, you're gonna have a narrow view on the world, and yes, you will be weaker than a person who listened to his elders, who listened to the parents or their uncles, their aunts, or whatever, or anybody that was older than them and soaked in all that knowledge. That person will be stronger amongst all your peers, because you got that knowledge. And the same thing with the older people. If you sit up here stuck with these old people stuck in their old ways and don't listen to these young people and listen to them as they tell you how the world is evolving. Excuse me. As they tell you how the world is evolving, or what's going on in the world, or stuff like that. If you choose to be that old man on the porch, and like Stanley, get off my grass, Stanley. You say stay on my grass. You choose to be that person. Not let young people come in and you know give you knowledge. Yes, you're gonna be weaker amongst older people because you're gonna be the old man. You're not gonna be the man that can go into a situation with younger people and be able to talk to them and communicate with them because you don't communicate with them. So yes, we need each other, man. We need to start listening to each other and respecting each other and just get knowledge off each other. We need to because the way we going now, it's not looking good. We got to we letting other people divide us. You know, we worrying about other people. Let other people worry about them. We can only control what we do. We can only control our actions and stuff. Don't worry about what they do over there or what they do over here. Worry about what you do. Know what you do first. Worry about what you do, and then you expand your circle and worry about other people. But make sure you handle yourself first. Before you sit up here and worry about what everybody else doing. For real. You know, I like to give a shout out to my my brother, Kenyatta Michaela, out there on the road. I used to be out there driving trucks. I don't miss it anymore, but I had great experiences out there, and I miss it. I miss traveling the country because that was one of the reasons why I did it because I wanted to see the country because I always had a fascination about seeing the country since I was little, but I was never able to do it. So I finally got a chance driving trucks. I soaked it all in and I enjoyed it. It was the last time I was able to go cross country with my wife. We stayed out for about a couple of months, and I was out here. It was like being on vacation, but making money at the same time. So I like to give a shout out to KJ doing this thing. You know, checking in. I just say a shout out to my beautiful wife in here. She's checking in. Like I said, without her, it wouldn't be doing this right now. And it's good to have somebody in your corner that supports you 100%. That makes a difference. That really makes a difference. I think that's a very underrated, part. You got to have because you look at the really great people in history, man. You look beside, they always had that strong person. Not behind them, right beside them. You know, helping them, helping them whenever they get down. Taking the lead whenever their man might be slacking. They jump in and take the lead. Just like it ain't nothing. That's what you need in life. Not somebody's gonna sit there and question or make your life like stressful, like not be your peace. You want someone to be your peace. You know, is everything gonna be perfect? No. I mean, you're gonna argue. You're gonna argue about little things. Little things may piss you off, but like I said, it's all about how you make up. It's all about are you willing to not let little things drive you apart. That's what it's all about. Because things gonna always come up. Like I said, especially with now with social media and these phones and stuff, and just so much opportunity out there. But you got to be a grown up out here. You know, you got to be a man out here. Be out. Don't care about all that. There's beautiful people all over this world. You gonna see beautiful people every day throughout your life. You out here in this world. Because you see a beautiful person don't mean you have to run after them like a dog in heat. Like Mark said, like a dog with a little pink thing hanging out. You don't need to be acting like that, man. Just go ahead, go on with your life. You got something good at home. That's what you worried about. Don't worry about all this stuff out there. Don't worry about all this distraction. You know, Stay focused, keep your eye on the prize, and everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. And like I said, it means a lot to the people that check me out and the people that come up here and give me a little bit of support. And I want y'all to know that goes that goes heard. I hear everything, and I take that. I love everybody, even if you're just saying do your thing or just saying thank you or just saying Bob, I support you and stuff like that. All that stuff matters. Believe it. Everything matters to me because I know, like I said, I appreciate it because I know you taking your time out of your busy day. You know, you know, as we get older, it seems like the days go faster. It seems like we don't have enough time during the day to get things done. So the fact that you would take a few moments out of your day to give me your ear, I appreciate it, and I love everybody that do that. I love it from the bottom of my heart. And I hope in the future I get to show my appreciation to y'all, be able to help y'all or show my appreciation for your, support. Because all of y'all that's coming right now, as they say, y'all my day ones. And that means a lot, you know. But like I said, I hope we can, I'll be back tomorrow. We're gonna do this again tomorrow. Same. I'm gonna try to do it tomorrow, probably because I'm like I said, I'm in the central time zone, so I go on my time zone. I have a lot of people from the east, so the east is an hour ahead. So most of the time it'll probably be around, five, between 5 or 7, between 5 and 7, between those windows. So in the east it'll be between 6 and 8. So I ain't gonna give you a specific time. What we try to do is because I have on Facebook, I might announce it on Facebook like 30 minutes before that. I'm about to go live or I'm about to shoot an episode and stuff like that to give people a chance if they want to come live or participate. If you want to catch it afterwards, it's fine too. It don't matter, man. I just want you to come watch it, come check me out. Like I said, the most people I grew up with, I'm the same person that y'all knew growing up. Same old Big Bobby Bob or whatever y'all used to call me. OG Bobby Steele, Bobby Digital, Bobby Hill Figure, any all kind of names that y'all used to call me. I'm still that same person. Still cool, still easy to get along with, talk to, keep it real. Like I said, we're gonna sit here and cut it up. Like I said, I like to thank everybody for if they whenever they watch this. Thank y'all for joining me. Like I said, I'll bring it back tomorrow. And I like to thank like I said, I like to thank KJ, and thank my beautiful, lovely wife. Boy, have mercy. Getting thoughts on my head right now. Right. But yeah, I like to thank my beautiful wife for checking in, for all the support, and I know that I love her and that we doing this together, and we see where we go. Ride or die. You know, ride or die. I like to thank y'all for coming out. Like to I hope y'all have a good night. Have a good evening. Kiss your kids. Tell your loved one that you love them because tomorrow's not promised. And I'll check y'all out. Hopefully I'll be here tomorrow. You can cut it up again. I love y'all and good night.